Hello everyone, how are you? My name is Sam. In this video, we will tell you about the top 10 games like Black Myth Wukong. Black Myth Wukong is an action RPG, taking the world by storm due to its high quality, engaging combat, and impressive story based on the classic work of Chinese literature, Journey to the West. It may seem that this game has no comparison, but several titles are quite similar as they share certain elements such as the gameplay style, the tone of the story, and even the level design. With so many comments around the game, it is unsurprising that many players have already finished it and want to experience similar titles. Even for those who haven't had a chance to try it yet, there are several options to choose from. Whether they also use elements of Asian mythology and folklore, or offer an amazing action-adventure experience, there are very good games for those who enjoyed Black Myth Wukong. Number 10. Dynasty Warriors 4. Two details in particular make Black Myth Wukong stand out, namely the over-the-top action and its roots in Chinese folk tales. The same two elements can be found in the Dynasty Warriors franchise, specifically Dynasty Warriors 4. In this impressive installment of the Muzu-like series, players will encounter an embellished version of the Romance of the Three Kingdoms story. Similar to Black Myth Wukong, Dynasty Warriors 4 takes various elements from the original works and adapts them into an action-packed, over-the-top experience to give the player control over the narrative. Instead of one-on-one combat, Dynasty Warriors 4 puts the player in the role of a Chinese commander battling hordes of hundreds of enemies. It is a power fantasy with roots in Chinese history.
Officer, beaten. My paradise!
Number 9. Lies of P. Speaking of games that have been the talk of the town, Lies of P is quite similar to Black Myth Wukong in its development process. Both games were independent projects that received a lot of public acclaim as soon as they were announced and were very well received upon release. Their gameplay styles are also quite similar in terms of fast-paced combat and fairly strong enemies. Lies of P is also based on literature, specifically Carlos Collodi's classic 1883 novel, The Adventures of Pinocchio. This version adapts the children's story to make it a more action-oriented narrative, while retaining certain symbolism that refers to the original story and many other fantasy tales. It is also notable for its high visual quality and interesting character designs. Number 8. Wulong Fallen Dynasty. One of the most similar games to Black Myth Wukong currently available has to be Wulong Fallen Dynasty. Set in ancient China, this title presents an alternate version of the time of the fall of the Han Dynasty. This time, the player is tasked with defeating various historical figures and creatures from Chinese mythology that have been corrupted by the demonic Qi. Wulong has a linear structure with active real-time combat that uses a deflection system to counter enemy attacks. It also features special powers of the 5 divine beasts that work similarly to the transformations in Black Myth Wukong. This is the perfect type of game for those interested in learning more about Chinese mythology and culture in an entertaining way. Number 7. Stellar Blade. Also started as an indie project, Stellar Blade gained worldwide fame after a deal with PlayStation and is now one of the most talked about action titles of recent times. This action-adventure game shines with spectacular boss design and a very engaging learning curve. Its combat is fast and focused on the action, using tools such as parrying and dodging to maintain an entertaining rhythm. Visually, the game stands out because it takes full advantage of the graphical possibilities available on the market. This is reflected in the cutscenes, which give way to epic battles, and some of the special attacks that flourish in all its style. Although the exploration can be somewhat linear, and the story quite simple compared to other titles of the same genre, it ends up being a very good next-generation experience.
그날 이후 지성의 도시들은 모두 예비처럼 폐허가 됐어. 잘나신 분들의 우주로
Number 6. Onimusha 3: Demon Siege. Similar in style, but set in feudal Japan, the Onimusha franchise reinterprets historical Japanese figures in fantasy and action-packed situations. While the combat and exploration style is similar to games like Resident Evil and Silent Hill, the approach is much more focused on hack-and-slash combat, providing a more active and fast-paced experience. Players who enjoyed the various bizarre and outlandish situations in Black Myth Wukong will feel right at home in Onimusha's third installment. Demon Siege features a bizarre story involving armies of demons led by Japanese commanders, specialized French police, and time paradoxes. This is undoubtedly one of the most unique games in the PlayStation 2 lineup. Number 5. Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Released to much fan anticipation, Star Wars Jedi Survivor continues the adventures of Cal Kestis 5 years after the events of the acclaimed Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. This time around, many of the game's mechanics were refined to provide more combat and movement options throughout the game. In terms of exploration, this game also added fun platforming segments that set it apart from others in the genre. It is currently considered by many to be one of the best Star Wars games in recent years, due to its interesting mix of different elements that keep the adventure active and engaging. Likewise, the story remains quite intriguing, exploring details of the Star Wars universe previously untouched. All these characteristics are shared with Black Myth Wukong, as both have a very nice rhythm in their narrative that keeps all players hooked for hours.
Nice move! Everything burns!
Number 4. Nioh. One particular element that stands out in Black Myth Wukong is its high level of difficulty, which is why many consider it a Souls-like game, even though it is not completely one. This detail is also shared with Nioh, another action-adventure game that has established itself as one of the best in its genre. In addition, both games take certain elements of Asian folklore and adapt them to a more action-oriented narrative. Nioh follows the story of English sailor William Adams, the first Western samurai in real life, who arrives in Japan in the 15th century in search of the sorcerer Edward Kelly. In the course of his adventure, he must confront several yokai that have emerged from the wars at the end of the Sengoku period. The game features a fast-paced combat system that forces the player to make difficult decisions in a matter of seconds, providing an exciting and unique challenge. Number 3. Sekiro Shadows. Die Twice. Among From Software's games, Sekiro Shadows Die Twice is one of the most different, subverting the Dark Souls formula almost completely. Many RPG and customization elements were abandoned to make way for a set of mechanics established for all players by having to control a single specific character. This also meant the introduction of new details, such as a gameplay style with a heavy emphasis on stealth and speed. One particular element that stands out from Sekiro is the introduction of the stance bar, which is separate from the enemy's health bar. This encourages a precise and fast-paced fighting style, something it shares with Black Myth Wukong, as well as its interesting perspective on certain elements of Buddhist philosophy and mythology, which are adapted as enemies or main characters throughout the plot. Number 2. Final Fantasy XVI. If you love the flashy action and RPG-style progression of Black Myth Wukong, and you want something just as deep to sink your teeth into, then Final Fantasy XVI is a surprisingly similar adventure to try out. Playing as Clive, you'll follow his life and hardships as he learns about the medieval-style political intrigue his life has been steeped in as the world seems to fall apart around him. As he absorbs the power of mythical summons, his arsenal only grows more varied and powerful, making him one of the most fun protagonists to learn to control.
This ends now.
Number 1. God of War. No game of extreme quality comes closer to Black Myth Wukong than the 2018 return of God of War. This impressive installment from Santa Monica Studio is still making waves today and has become a standard for what AAA games can offer. Its story is completely engrossing, adapting various elements of Norse mythology into a narrative that feels personal and deep with a character as recognizable as Kratos. As for combat, it offers a good variety of options when it comes to fighting, which keeps the experience quite entertaining and refreshing. In addition, the game spectacularly mixes combat with cinematic segments that amaze everyone. These details, mixed with some of the best scenarios in gaming, give shape to the best world building seen in years and set a precedent for new successes such as Black Myth Wukong.